Not the kind of silence that's peaceful or ordinary, but the kind that feels intentional, loud, inescapable, and designed to say something that words cannot. On Meghan Markle's highly anticipated birthday, a day the Duchess had hoped would mark a new chapter in her public comeback, the silence of one particular person spoke volumes. That person was Serena Williams. For years, the world believed Meghan and Serena were more than just public acquaintances. They were kindred spirits. Two successful women who had broken barriers, faced critics, and leaned on each other through the ruthless cycles of fame. The friendship was paraded at events, championed in interviews, and amplified through social media posts that showcased laughter, loyalty, and sisterhood. But on this day, the day that should have seen the two women smiling for the cameras or exchanging warm words, Serena didn't just skip the celebration. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. She rejected the invitation. And then, just days later, the airwaves cracked open with a statement so jarring it sent ripples through both Hollywood and royal circles. A close source claimed that Serena, in a private conversation, dismissed Meghan as a woman with no family and no friends. The remark was brutal, stark, and devastating. But more than that, it felt like the lid was being pried off a sealed box no one dared to open. A box filled with secrets, broken friendships, and the sobering reality behind Meghan Markle's golden image. This video is not just about a friendship gone cold. It's about unraveling the layers of a narrative that was carefully crafted and meticulously maintained, and watching it slowly come undone. What really happened between Meghan and Serena? What does Serena's rejection reveal about Meghan's current standing in the social elite? And why are so many people now echoing the same words? She's alone. To understand the weight of this moment, we have to rewind. Rewind past the glamorous photos and public support. Past the headlines proclaiming Meghan as Hollywood's newest darling. Past the fairy tale wedding watched by millions. We need to go back to the moment Meghan stepped onto the world stage, not as an actress, but as a royal, and the moment she stepped off, burning bridges in her wake. When Meghan married Prince Harry, it was supposed to be a love story for the ages. A fresh chapter for the British monarchy. A symbol of progress, unity, and inclusiveness. But almost immediately, friction began to grow between Meghan and the world around her. The press became combative, the palace grew cold, and soon, the Duchess found herself not in a storybook romance, but in a war of perception. Amid all this chaos, Serena stood by her. When Meghan tearfully spoke during the Africa tour interview, where she admitted no one had asked if she was okay, Serena publicly offered support. When Meghan faced brutal tabloid scrutiny, Serena was there, telling the world to give her friend grace. Their friendship became part of Meghan's shield, her proof that despite the storm, she had powerful allies. But what the public didn't see, or perhaps didn't want to see, were the slow, invisible fractures forming beneath the surface. Small moments that, alone, seemed meaningless, but strung together, began to tell a very different story. A missed tennis match here. A lukewarm birthday message there. Whispers among staffers that Serena had stopped replying to Meghan's texts. An interview where Serena dodged questions about Meghan with a well-rehearsed smile. All of it brushed off as coincidence, until the silence on Meghan's birthday screamed the truth. Now, people are asking, what changed? Some say Serena grew tired of being a prop in Meghan's carefully managed public life, that she felt used more as a symbol than a sister. Others suggest deeper tensions, disagreements over values, over the performative nature of Hollywood activism, over loyalty and self-promotion. And then there are those who point to the relentless PR machine Meghan has built around herself, one that leaves little room for authenticity or dissent. But perhaps the most haunting theory isn't about a falling out at all. Perhaps it's about realization. That Serena, like so many others in Meghan's orbit, began to understand that the woman the world was sold wasn't the woman they really knew. That's where the quote hits hardest. She has no family and no friends. It wasn't just a dismissal, it was an indictment. A damning summary of Meghan's position in the world. Because in that one sentence, Serena allegedly captured what many have suspected for years, that Meghan Markle, despite all her influence, fame, and fortune, may very well be alone. Her family? Estranged. Her friendships? perpetually rotating. Her Hollywood allies, slowly distancing, and the husband she once leaned on, now lost in his own battles with relevance, public image, and identity. So what does it mean when someone like Serena Williams walks away? It means something larger is shifting. Serena isn't just a tennis icon. She's a symbol of resilience, power, and truth. Her words carry weight. Her silence carries even more. And for her to not only decline Meghan's birthday invitation, but to allegedly express such brutal honesty, it signals a shift not just in their personal dynamic, but in the way Meghan is perceived by those once closest to her. Over the course of this expose, we're going to pull back the curtain. We'll dissect the history of Meghan and Serena's relationship, where it began, where it soured, and how it unraveled so dramatically. We'll explore the psychological toll of public isolation, the fragile nature of manufactured friendships, and how celebrity narratives can collapse when they stray too far from reality. We'll talk to insiders who once saw Meghan as a beacon of hope and now see her as a cautionary tale. We'll analyze quotes, trace timelines, and bring you into the rarely glimpsed world behind Meghan Markle's image. And by the end of it, one question will linger in your mind, maybe hauntingly so. If you had everything, yet no one to call, would it all be worth it? Keep watching. The truth you're about to hear is not just about one birthday snub. It's about the cost of image, the fragility of fame, and the quiet tragedy of a woman who once seemed to have it all. It began, as most high society scandals do, with an invitation. Crafted in ivory cream cardstock, embossed in gold foil, and sealed with Meghan Markle's now-signature wax crest. The kind of luxurious gesture that screamed opulence even before one opened it. The date was set. The venue was secret but whispered to be a private hillside estate in Montecito with panoramic ocean views. The guest list? A curated mosaic of Hollywood elites, philanthropists, media darlings, and old friends she could still count on. Or at least, that's what she believed. There, nestled near the top of the invitation stack, was the name that Meghan assumed would be an instant yes, Serena Williams. For Meghan, it was a no-brainer. Serena had been by her side at pivotal moments, attending the royal wedding, speaking warmly in interviews, and even collaborating on her Archetypes podcast. A no-show from Serena would be unthinkable. So Meghan sent the invite with confidence, expecting at worst a polite scheduling conflict, but secretly anticipating a warm hug on the day, a toast, maybe even a social media post featuring the two queens smiling beneath golden lights. But the response that came back wasn't what Meghan expected. It wasn't a cheerful RSVP, nor was it a fluffy excuse about travel constraints or a family emergency. It wasn't even a standard, celebrity-level ghosting, which Hollywood types knew how to execute with precision and charm. Instead, it was what sources later described as a curt and uncharacteristically blunt message sent through Serena's team. Serena will not be attending. Nothing more. No well wishes. No explanations. No polite distance or warm ambiguity. Just a flat, direct rejection. And then, the silence stretched on like a long shadow. A silence that, to Meghan, didn't just sting. It shattered something fundamental. In Meghan's world, where perception is everything and image is tightly managed, the implications were immediate. Her team scrambled behind the scenes to understand the context. Was it a misunderstanding? A miscommunication? Had someone offended Serena's camp inadvertently? But the more they prodded, the clearer it became. This wasn't an accident. This was a decision. A very deliberate one. Within hours of the RSVP being logged, the mood around Meghan's birthday planning shifted. What was once a buzzing, optimistic atmosphere quickly dulled. Staff noticed a shift in Meghan herself. She grew withdrawn, her excitement dulled, and sources say she repeatedly asked the same question in various forms. Why would she do this to me? At first, Meghan's public relations team tried to brush it off. The party would go on. There were still plenty of notable guests expected to show. But behind closed doors, Meghan was shaken. Her confidence, especially after months of turbulent press coverage, needed this birthday to be a symbolic return to form, a glamorous affirmation that she still held power, relevance, and social capital. And in Meghan's mind, Serena's presence would have helped cement that. But now, that anchor was gone. And worse, her absence couldn't be disguised. Because while some celebrities fade quietly from events and no one notices, Serena's non-attendance was glaring. Paparazzi who staked out the property noticed her missing. Attendees whispered about the conspicuous empty seat. And then came the real blow, the leaks. Within a week of the party, Page 6 ran a short item. It was barely 2 paragraphs, buried beneath juicier celebrity gossip. But it packed a punch. Serena Williams skips Meghan Markle's birthday bash. Sources say the tennis champ has distanced herself from the Duchess. The report didn't quote anyone directly. It didn't need to. The suggestion alone was enough to light a fire. Suddenly, the narrative turned. Online forums and royal watchers began speculating. Why would Serena skip? Was there a falling out? Was this about the Netflix fiasco? Spotify? The alleged behind-the-scenes drama with other celebrity friends? Had Serena grown tired of Meghan's calculated media playbook? Fueling the flames further, Serena posted something subtle, but to some, significant, on the day of the party. An Instagram story of her enjoying a quiet night at home. No makeup, no glam, sipping tea and reading a book. The caption? Peace is priceless. To the average eye, it might have seemed innocent. A wholesome evening at home. But to those paying attention, and in the world of celebrity optics, everyone pays attention, it was a message. A deliberate contrast to the high-stakes glamour unfolding at Meghan's Montecito affair. And in that contrast, the message rang clear. Serena had chosen peace over performance. Authenticity over obligation. For Meghan, the humiliation wasn't just in the absence. It was in what the absence represented. Because Serena wasn't just a guest. She was, to Meghan, a symbol. Of black excellence. Of feminine power. Of elite acceptance. Serena had once been a walking endorsement of Meghan's social worth. And now, she was a glaring rejection of it. What made this sting even deeper was the timing. Meghan had been on rocky ground for months. The failed Spotify deal, the underwhelming archetypes reception, the awkward silence from the royal family. She needed a win. She needed her birthday to be a statement. That she was still adored, still celebrated, still someone who mattered in all the rooms that counted. And instead, what she got was a headline about one of her closest friends publicly walking away. The staff at Archewell, Meghan and Harry's nonprofit foundation, reportedly went into PR overdrive. Strategies were floated. Should Meghan post a happy birthday video surrounded by loving friends and family? Should she name-drop Serena in a positive way to squash rumors? Should they leak a story about scheduling conflicts to patch the hole? Ultimately, they chose silence. Or more precisely, polished silence. Meghan posted a vague but perfectly lit birthday message on social media days later, thanking her supporters, sharing an image of her surrounded by candles and flowers. But those who knew the truth said the real Meghan that week was not glowing. She was blindsided, hurt, and confused. Because no matter how many cameras she smiled for, one question gnawed at her like a splinter beneath the skin. Why did Serena walk away? What no one knew at the time, not the public, not even some inside Meghan's circle, was that Serena hadn't just declined the invitation. She had made a comment. A comment that, once leaked, would burn through the media like wildfire. The words were brutal in their simplicity. According to a source close to Serena's inner circle, she said, "She has no family and no friends. No qualifiers. No softeners. Just that." Those 7 words would go on to trigger one of the most intense and painful media storms Meghan had faced since leaving the royal family. But in the moment the RSVP was declined, none of that had happened yet. There was just the silence. And Meghan, sitting in a home filled with luxury, surrounded by curated beauty and orchestrated appearances, left wondering if perhaps, just perhaps, everything around her was more illusion than reality. Because if Serena was walking away, who else might follow? And that's how it began. Not with a scandal, or a screaming match, or a public blow-up. Just with an invitation. An empty RSVP box. And a silence that echoed louder than any speech ever could. To understand the seismic weight of Serena Williams rejecting Meghan Markle's birthday invitation, one has to go back. Not just a few weeks, or even months, but nearly a decade. Because what was lost in that moment wasn't just a party guest. It was the unraveling of a friendship that, for years, had been broadcast as something rare, strong, and unwavering. A sisterhood born of struggle, rooted in shared experience, and celebrated by the world. Their story didn't begin in Buckingham Palace or on the tennis court, but at a glitzy 2010s charity event in New York. Back then, Meghan Markle was still a working actress best known for her role in Suits, trying to navigate the blurred lines of Hollywood networking and social climbing. Serena, on the other hand, was already a legend, a powerhouse in sports, fashion, and business, commanding international respect far beyond the tennis arena. And yet, there was a spark. According to early interviews, the two hit it off almost instantly. Meghan, in a blog post from her now-defunct lifestyle site The Tig, once gushed about Serena's grace, humility, and strength. She described how their conversation that night lasted well beyond the event, flowing into late-night texts and brunch meetups whenever schedules allowed. Serena, too, seemed to embrace the connection. At the time, she reportedly found Meghan real, a rare quality in a sea of artificial Hollywood types. In those early years, the bond seemed genuine. Meghan would be seen in Serena's box at major tournaments. Serena would speak highly of Meghan in the press. The two would attend dinners together, their photos circulated across tabloids and celebrity blogs, sparking admiration and envy. To outsiders, it was aspirational, a friendship between two strong, successful women who had each overcome the odds and found strength in one another. Then came 2016, a year that would change everything. Meghan met Prince Harry. Suddenly, the actress with a promising future was thrust into the global spotlight. The British press descended. The paparazzi followed her every move. And Meghan, once a semi-private figure, was now royalty in waiting. But in the storm of publicity, one thing remained constant: Serena Williams. Meghan clung to her friend like an emotional anchor, often name-dropping her in interviews and citing her as a source of advice and strength. In her now famous 2017 Vanity Fair profile, the first in which she spoke publicly about Harry, Meghan mentioned Serena by name, saying she had given her counsel on how to navigate fame. "She's been through it all," Meghan said. "I asked her how to handle the press, and she told me, 'You've got to be authentic. Stay grounded.'" Serena, when asked about Meghan, returned the favor. During a press conference at Wimbledon that same year, she beamed when reporters asked about Meghan's relationship with Harry. "I'm so happy for her," she said. "She's such a great girl, and she deserves every bit of happiness." The pinnacle of this friendship's public display came in 2018 at the royal wedding. Serena and her husband Alexis Ohanian were among the select group of A-list guests who made the cut for the star-studded Windsor Castle ceremony. Photos of Serena in a blush pink dress and dramatic fascinator circulated widely, cementing her status not just as a friend, but as part of Meghan's inner royal circle. But it was what happened after the wedding that drew attention. Serena didn't just attend the ceremony. She supported Meghan through the storm that followed. When Meghan became the subject of relentless British tabloid attacks, accused of being difficult, demanding, and breaking protocol, Serena defended her. In interviews, she referred to Meghan as the strongest person I know and called the scrutiny unfair and disgusting. The public lapped it up. Meghan and Serena were held up as a modern-day symbol of Black female solidarity. Two women who had carved out space for themselves in elite white-dominated institutions, the British monarchy and professional tennis, and who stood by each other through the backlash. But behind the public smiles, insiders say things were not as seamless as they seemed. According to multiple sources who later spoke under anonymity, cracks had begun forming in the foundation of their friendship. One former staffer from Meghan's camp claimed that by late 2019, Serena had become noticeably more distant. While she still spoke supportively of Meghan in public, their private communications had slowed. Phone calls went unanswered. Text messages were acknowledged, but not returned with the same warmth. The turning point, some insiders believe, was the U.S. Open final in 2019. Meghan famously flew to New York to watch Serena compete, a move that was seen by critics as ill-timed and self-serving, given the growing scrutiny on the Sussexes for their frequent use of private jets while preaching about climate change. Serena lost the match, a painful defeat, and while Meghan was seen clapping from the stands, observers noted she didn't join Serena afterward for a private dinner or backstage support. That moment marked the start of a shift. By 2020, as Meghan and Harry stepped back from royal duties and began building their media empire in California, Serena's public mentions of Meghan became more vague. When asked about her during interviews, Serena dodged specifics. She offered generic support, but never elaborated on the depth of their friendship. When Meghan launched her podcast Archetypes in 2022, Serena appeared as the debut guest, but even that episode raised eyebrows. Observers noticed how often Meghan talked about herself during the conversation, often redirecting the focus from Serena's story back to her own experiences. Serena, ever the seasoned pro, remained poised. But beneath the surface, those close to her say she felt the dynamic had changed. One insider put it bluntly: Serena started feeling like she was being used, as a prop, as a name, as validation, not as a friend. Still, she stayed quiet. Perhaps out of loyalty. Perhaps out of a desire to avoid drama. Or perhaps because, like so many in Meghan's orbit, she was trying to figure out how to walk the delicate line between friendship and branding, between emotional sincerity and the optics of being associated with someone whose public image was growing more controversial by the day. By the time Meghan's birthday invite arrived in 2024, the relationship was already hanging by a thread. Some sources say Meghan knew this, that the invite wasn't just an invitation, but a peace offering. An olive branch wrapped in gold-trimmed stationery. Meghan, they say, hoped Serena would say yes. That the simple act of showing up would signal that whatever unspoken tension existed between them could be quietly mended. But Serena said no. And that no, when traced backwards, didn't come out of nowhere. It came from a long line of ignored boundaries, imbalanced dynamics, and unmet expectations. It came from years of watching a friendship evolve from something intimate into something performative, from private laughter to public leverage. And perhaps Serena had finally had enough. This wasn't just about a birthday party. It was about everything that had come before. The pressures, the shifts, the subtle betrayals, and the final realization that the Meghan she had once known was no longer the Meghan standing before the world. As the next chapters of this story unfold, and as we dive deeper into what came after that rejection, the timeline of this friendship serves as a haunting reminder. Not all relationships thrive under the spotlight. Some wither, some get distorted, and some, no matter how strong they once seemed, eventually disappear, not with a fight, but with silence. On the surface, Serena Williams had always been a figure of grace, composure, and unmatched strength. Whether it was a championship match under the world's gaze or a charity gala packed with flashing cameras, she rarely cracked. But those who know Serena well will tell you that beneath the polished exterior lives a woman who values loyalty, authenticity, and above all, emotional honesty. And as her relationship with Meghan Markle evolved over the years, those three values slowly began to feel compromised, not in one explosive moment, but through countless subtle disappointments. By the time 2022 came to a close, people within Serena's tight-knit circle had started noticing something. Meghan, once a frequent presence on Serena's call log, had become more of a scheduling commitment, something managed by assistants, confirmed through managers, arranged for media optics rather than emotional connection. One of Serena's close confidants even remarked that it felt like every time Meghan reached out, it was because she needed something, a quote, a photo, an appearance. This was not what Serena had signed up for. In private conversations with friends, Serena reportedly began to question the authenticity of the friendship. Was Meghan truly calling to check in, or was she curating moments for her brand? Had their once spontaneous relationship become a carefully constructed series of PR-friendly exchanges? One of the first cracks that made Serena pause was the Archetypes podcast episode they recorded together. On paper, it was a win. Meghan's highly anticipated series launched with Serena as the headline guest, a powerhouse debut featuring two women at the top of their game. But behind the scenes, Serena left the taping feeling uneasy. According to a source present during the recording, Serena was surprised by how much of the conversation was steered away from her own story and toward Meghan's monologues. It felt less like a dialogue and more like a platform, the source said. Serena thought she'd be opening up about her own journey, only to find herself being used to validate Meghan's narrative. It wasn't just the content, it was the tone, the scripting, the control. Serena, who has long valued spontaneity and genuine interaction, was reportedly taken aback by how rehearsed the session felt. Even small moments, like laughter and emotional anecdotes, seemed overly timed. It felt like every second was being edited for maximum Meghan exposure, leaving Serena as a secondary figure in a conversation that was supposed to be about her. Still, she said nothing publicly. She promoted the podcast out of professionalism. But according to friends, that was the moment Serena began pulling back. Behind the scenes, things continued to sour. Meghan's team would reach out repeatedly with ideas for collaborations, guest spots, product tie-ins, event appearances. Serena, ever polite, would decline gracefully. But each rejection seemed to be met with coolness from Meghan's camp, as though Serena's refusal to participate was seen as disloyalty rather than personal boundary setting. Then came the straw that reportedly broke Serena's trust completely. In early 2023, Meghan's media team pitched a joint brand campaign involving Serena's fashion line and a Meghan-backed women's empowerment initiative. The proposal came complete with mood boards, scripted interviews, and even a marketing plan that included a surprise, public reunion between the two friends. What Serena found most disturbing, however, wasn't the ambition. It was that the entire pitch had been developed without her input. They treated her like a brand asset, said one insider. Like she was a logo, not a person. Serena was stunned. She thought, is this really how they see me? Serena declined the campaign. Politely, firmly, but emotionally, something changed after that. According to multiple sources, Serena began referring to the friendship in past tense. We were close, she would say, not we are. She stopped engaging in joint media ventures and started turning down invitations with increasing regularity. And she told those closest to her that she needed space, not from the public eye, but from Meghan. It's worth noting that Serena didn't explode. She didn't leak stories, give a tell-all interview, or retaliate with social media posts. That's not her style. What she did instead was withdraw, slowly, quietly, but with unmistakable clarity. The rejection of Meghan's birthday invitation wasn't the beginning, it was the end. And yet, Serena's decision not to attend the birthday wasn't just a logistical snub, it was symbolic. Meghan, used to commanding attention from celebrities and royalty alike, was suddenly faced with the realization that Serena wasn't playing the game anymore. That the friendship, once fueled by trust and shared experience, had become transactional. And Serena wasn't interested in playing along. Even more devastating was what came after. The alleged quote, that Meghan has no family and no friends, was, according to insiders, not meant to be public. It was said in a moment of raw honesty, shared with a longtime friend over dinner. But like all things in celebrity circles, it eventually made its way into the wrong hands. When the quote reached Meghan's team, the fallout was immediate. Her inner circle, those who remained, were stunned. Meghan herself reportedly broke down in tears, blindsided by the betrayal. But others, including staffers who had worked with Meghan over the years, weren't shocked at all. Serena just said what a lot of people were thinking, said one former aide. It was harsh, but not wrong. Because behind the perfectly lit Instagram posts and the magazine covers, Meghan's reality was becoming harder to mask. Her relationship with her father? Estranged. Her bond with her half-sister? Litigated in court. Her friendships with key celebrity allies? Fading. And now, Serena, perhaps the most publicly visible and emotionally resonant of all, had quietly stepped away. Why? For many, it came down to values. Serena had spent her life fighting for authenticity, for being seen, not marketed. And in Meghan's world, that line had blurred beyond recognition. What began as a genuine friendship between two women who admired each other had evolved into a complex web of image, media, and control. And Serena, no matter how much history they shared, could no longer see herself in it. She didn't need drama. She didn't want headlines. She just wanted peace. And when the birthday invitation arrived, accompanied by press inquiries and strategic planning, Serena made her choice. She chose not to attend. She chose to stay home, sip her tea, and watch the storm from a distance. In that choice, she said everything she needed to say. It was 7 words. 7 words spoken behind closed doors. 7 words never intended for public consumption. But once they surfaced, they ignited an inferno of speculation, analysis, and heartbreak. When the phrase, "she has no family and no friends," was attributed to Serena Williams and linked directly to Meghan Markle, it was as if the entire internet exhaled in shock. and then immediately inhaled for gossip-fueled outrage. For a woman whose brand had been meticulously cultivated to evoke the image of global sisterhood, of humanitarian empathy, and of intimate, strong connections, those 7 words cut deep. They didn't just suggest rejection. They suggested emptiness. They painted a haunting portrait of someone surrounded by press, but isolated in truth. And for Meghan, they marked the moment where perception collided with reality, and the fallout was brutal. According to those closest to the leak, the quote originated during a private dinner with Serena's close confidants in Beverly Hills. It wasn't a press event. There were no recorders, no paparazzi lurking outside. It was an evening among trusted companions, the kind of night where guards are let down and real feelings bubble to the surface. Serena was reportedly asked about the birthday party, why she declined, and what her relationship with Meghan looked like now. Her response was said to be quiet, almost reflective. "She has no family and no friends," Serena allegedly said, taking a sip of her wine. Simple, direct, not angry, not bitter, just honest. The dinner continued. The moment passed, but one of the attendees, someone with access to celebrity blogs and a penchant for media whispers, repeated the line days later to an industry contact. From there, it leaked like water through cracked glass, seeping into the inner workings of Hollywood PR and then exploding into the mainstream. By the time it reached the public, it was no longer a private musing. It was a headline. Serena Williams allegedly says Meghan Markle has no family and no friends after birthday snub. The tabloids went wild. Twitter, or X as it had been rebranded, trended globally with hashtags like hashtag #NoFamilyNoFriends, hashtag Meghan Exposed, and even hashtag Serena Speaks. Overnight, Meghan became the centerpiece of an online feeding frenzy. Comment sections filled with mock sympathy, genuine concern, and venomous judgment. The phrase took on a life of its own, used not just to criticize Meghan, but to dissect the entire narrative she'd built. Media analysts dissected the context. Some saw the quote as a commentary on Meghan's increasingly isolated public life. Others accused Serena of betrayal, suggesting the tennis icon had succumbed to the same anti-Meghan bias that plagued tabloids for years. But the truth, as always, was far more layered. Because that statement didn't emerge from nowhere. It followed years of tabloid feuds with her father, Thomas Markle, who repeatedly aired private grievances on television. It followed public lawsuits involving her half-sister, Samantha Markle, who claimed defamation. It followed her very public rift with the royal family, culminating in the Oprah interview where she claimed she was left unsupported, abandoned, and even victimized behind palace walls. But what stung the most was that the same narrative Meghan had used to describe her pain, being isolated, unsupported, unprotected, was now being used against her. Only this time, not by a stranger or a gossip columnist, but by someone who had once called her a sister. Inside Meghan's camp, the mood was reportedly chaotic. When the leak hit the news cycle, Meghan was said to be completely unprepared. She didn't believe Serena would say something like that, even in private. Her team initially denied the quote, calling it unverified and potentially fabricated. But privately, there was no confidence. No angry phone call to Serena. No public condemnation. Just quiet damage control and the painful question hanging in the air. What if it's true? The people around Meghan, what few remained, noticed a shift. She stopped appearing on Zoom calls. She canceled one of her scheduled speaking engagements. She retreated into the Montecito mansion with Harry, only emerging briefly for a staged photo op with her children in the garden days later. Insiders say she felt betrayed, not just by Serena, but by the timing. She had hoped this birthday would be a reset, a soft relaunch of her image. Instead, she was left facing headlines accusing her of being a social pariah. What made this even more complicated was that the quote wasn't just about Meghan. It was believed by many, and that belief had roots. Because if one started mapping Meghan's relationships over the years, the pattern became hard to ignore. Estranged from her father, publicly estranged from her half-siblings. No confirmed close friends from her childhood. Alleged fallouts with royal aides and palace staff. A seemingly distant connection with Harry's inner circle. Failed or faded friendships with celebrities like Priyanka Chopra, Victoria Beckham, and now, most glaringly, Serena Williams. Even Oprah Winfrey, once one of Meghan's most vocal champions, had grown noticeably silent. People began asking, who exactly is left? Tyler Perry? Maybe. Abigail Spencer? Perhaps. But even those relationships had grown quieter in recent months. And for a woman who once dazzled with star-studded gatherings and high-profile collaborations, the absence of voices defending her after the Serena leak was deafening. Some experts weighed in with psychological interpretations. Dr. Elaine Merrick, a well-known behavioral psychologist, went on a podcast to discuss the phenomenon of public isolation. What we're seeing here, she said, is the unraveling of a very controlled narrative. When a public figure works hard to curate an image of warmth, strength, and connection, and that image begins to conflict with real-life patterns of relational breakdown, the tension becomes unsustainable. She continued, that quote, "No family and no friends," isn't just commentary. It's a summary of what the public has slowly been piecing together. Right or wrong, people want authenticity. And when that feels absent, they look for proof. The press, eager for a new angle, began revisiting old interviews. Meghan's descriptions of her difficult childhood, her insistence that she had few close family members, her claims of being unsupported, mischaracterized, misunderstood. Suddenly, everything was being viewed under a microscope of skepticism. Was it all just another layer of branding? Meanwhile, Serena said nothing. Her silence was both strategic and revealing. By not denying the quote, she neither confirmed nor refuted it. And in the vacuum of her voice, the world decided for her. She became the quiet judge, the one who knew the truth and had finally, after years of restraint, let the mask slip. Those who had once accused the press of being unfair to Meghan now found themselves hesitating. If Serena, Meghan's supposed soul sister, had stepped away, what did that say? For Meghan, the sting was personal. Because she had built her identity around being the outsider who fought her way in, the underdog who married the prince, the modern woman forging a new path through outdated traditions. But now, even that identity seemed fragile. A woman without her family. A woman without her friends. 7 words had shattered more than her birthday plans. They had shattered her image. And perhaps, more tragically, they had exposed a truth even she couldn't ignore. For Meghan Markle, her birthday wasn't just a celebration. It was a statement. A meticulously designed opportunity to reclaim the narrative, reset her public image, and reassert her position among the Hollywood elite after months, if not years, of bruising headlines, public skepticism, and waning celebrity alliances. But what was meant to be a glossy affair soaked in luxury and surrounded by curated smiles quickly spiraled into something else entirely. A carefully planned event that turned into a public relations disaster. The vision for the birthday was grand, as always. Meghan's team had started months in advance, planning every detail, from the decor to the guest list, the lighting to the menu. The setting was meant to be intimate, yet exclusive, a secluded estate tucked into the coastal hills of Montecito, boasting sea breezes, cascading bougainvillea, and crystal-clear infinity pools. Guests were to arrive via private drivers, their phones surrendered at the gate to ensure privacy. Every angle of the evening had been scripted for both comfort and optics. Meghan's team, led by seasoned image consultants and publicists, pitched it internally as the soft rebranding. The goal was clear, to show Meghan not as the embattled duchess but as the graceful hostess, beloved friend, and woman still at the center of cultural power. There would be no press allowed indirectly, but enough indirect leaks, carefully chosen influencers, cryptic Instagram stories, anonymous tips to celebrity gossip pages to keep the public intrigued. But the cracks in the plan began early. First, there were the RSVP issues. A number of celebrities who had previously been seen close to Meghan were unable to attend due to schedule conflicts. A few sent brief regrets via their publicists. Some simply didn't reply at all. At first, Meghan brushed it off. It was the industry norm, after all. People were busy. But when Serena's rejection came through, not just absent, but unmistakably intentional, alarm bells rang. Her team tried to remain upbeat. It'll still be stunning, one aide reassured her. It's not about who didn't come. It's about who does. But even that was a gamble. On the day of the event, cars pulled up to the estate slower than expected. A few influencers arrived. A Netflix executive. A couple of lesser-known television personalities. Some adjacent names to former royals, mostly out of curiosity. but the A-list crowd Meghan had envisioned. Oprah, Beyoncé, Amal Clooney, George, Priyanka Chopra, Ellen DeGeneres, was notably absent. Inside the estate, everything looked perfect. Florals arranged in white and blush elegance, menus printed on imported linen paper, lighting filtered through custom-made gold-toned lanterns. A private string quartet played softly as trays of organic hors d'oeuvres circled the guests. Meghan, dressed in a flowing ivory dress with delicate pearl detailing, was flawless in appearance. But the atmosphere told another story. Multiple guests later described the evening as awkwardly stiff and curiously hollow. The vibe was less celebratory and more performative, as if the entire event was being held not for the people in the room, but for the ones who weren't. Conversations were surface level. Attendees posed for photos in designated spots, then wandered in small clusters, uncertain how to act without a clear focal point. Some noticed Meghan retreating to a corner of the garden for extended periods, speaking in hushed tones with her assistant. A photographer assigned to the event, hired by Meghan's own team, was seen gesturing nervously at the dwindling crowd. It was becoming clear that the event wasn't going as planned. And then came the real blow: social media. Despite efforts to control the narrative, word spread quickly that major figures were missing. Within hours, anonymous gossip accounts began posting. Why did so many stars skip Meghan's birthday bash? And is Meghan losing her grip on the Hollywood A-list? One widely followed pop culture commentator tweeted, "When you throw the party of the year and none of your friends show up, it's not a party. It's a cry for help." Even worse, some guests began leaking insider tidbits. One anonymous source described the event as lonely, like watching someone try to convince themselves they're still loved. Another said the event felt more like a staged photo shoot than a party. Meghan's team was furious. Immediately, crisis management protocols were put in place. Positive blurbs were fed to friendly outlets. Stock photos from years past were circulated to give the illusion of a fuller guest list. A brief Instagram post was scheduled, a dreamy photo of Meghan blowing out candles surrounded by an artful array of flowers, candles, and dessert plates, but notably, no guests. The caption read, "Grateful, humbled, loved," but the internet wasn't buying it. Comments under the post began flooding in. "Where is everyone? Why does this feel sad? This looks like a catalog ad, not a party." Trolls amplified the moment, but even sympathetic voices grew quiet. The mood had shifted. Meghan's narrative was no longer tightly controlled. And for someone who had made her career on image, first as an actress, then as a duchess, then as a public speaker and content creator, that loss of control was devastating. Then came the media. Major outlets, previously cautious about critiquing Meghan after her claims of mistreatment and racism within the royal family, began to run stories questioning her social standing. Headlines like "A Lonely Duchess" and "Inside Meghan Markle's Unattended Birthday Bash" made the rounds. Analysts began connecting the dots between the Netflix deal not being renewed, the Spotify partnership falling through, and now this lackluster birthday turnout. Even more damaging, stories began surfacing about her attempts to fill the room. A leaked email showed Meghan's team reaching out to influencers just days before the party, offering paid attendance and exposure in return for presents and promotional posts. That revelation cast a humiliating shadow over the event. What was meant to look like organic friendship now reeked of desperation. And through all of it, Serena remained silent. She didn't comment on the leak. She didn't post a birthday wish. She didn't clarify the quote. But her silence only reinforced the message. The woman who had once been Meghan's loudest defender had now become the embodiment of her absence. By the next morning, Meghan's team was in full cleanup mode. They issued private denials to selected journalists, pushed back against misinformation, and reposted old articles highlighting Meghan's past friendships and philanthropic efforts. But the public wasn't listening. They were too fixated on the contrast. The glamorous exterior and the seemingly hollow interior. For Meghan, the emotional toll was immense. According to one source, she didn't sleep the night after the party. She spent hours on the phone with Harry, venting, crying, questioning. She kept asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" the source said. But there was no single answer. Because the fallout wasn't from a single action. It was the cumulative result of years of tightly managed relationships, of fading trust, and of a narrative that no longer matched reality. What had been planned as a triumphant return to form had instead exposed the very thing Meghan had tried so hard to deny, that she was standing increasingly alone. And the world had noticed. In Hollywood, relationships are currency. Connections are built, maintained, and sometimes discarded depending on timing, relevance, and public perception. For Meghan Markle, this system once worked in her favor. She was the rising star with a royal title, the American actress turned duchess who captivated the world and drew high-wattage names into her orbit. From red carpet darlings to industry titans, her circle was once a reflection of her ascent. But after Serena Williams' snub and the silence that followed, an uncomfortable truth began to settle in. Meghan's inner circle was shrinking fast. When Meghan first stepped into the global spotlight alongside Prince Harry, the list of her reported confidants was a who's who of power and influence. Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry, Serena Williams, Priyanka Chopra, Abigail Spencer, Amal Clooney, Jessica Mulroney, Ellen DeGeneres. The names carried weight. These weren't just acquaintances. They were perceived as friends, protectors, and co-signers of Meghan's carefully shaped narrative. But by the time her birthday became a public embarrassment, many of those same names were either distant, silent, or missing altogether. Let's start with Jessica Mulroney. Once hailed as Meghan's best friend and style advisor, Mulroney was a fixture in her life. The two were inseparable during Meghan's early royal days. Jessica's children even participated in Meghan's wedding. But their friendship hit a wall in 2020 during a social media scandal that saw Mulroney accused of leveraging her privilege against a black influencer. Meghan, trying to navigate her own complicated public perception, reportedly distanced herself quickly. Some say she didn't even return Jessica's calls. Whether or not it was strategic, the friendship fractured. And Jessica, once the Duchess's closest ally, became a cautionary tale in Meghan's social sphere. Easy to lose, easy to replace. Then came Priyanka Chopra. The Bollywood-Hollywood crossover star was another key player in Meghan's early rise. She attended the royal wedding. She defended Meghan in interviews. The two were seen lunching together and exchanging social media praise. But when Meghan failed to attend Priyanka's wedding to Nick Jonas, despite being invited, rumors of a rift surfaced. While both women denied any falling out, they were noticeably less visible in each other's lives afterward. Priyanka's silence during Meghan's media storm didn't go unnoticed. Neither did her absence at Meghan's milestone birthday event. Even Oprah Winfrey, arguably the most powerful name associated with Meghan, has gone quiet. After the groundbreaking 2021 interview in which Meghan and Harry laid bare their grievances with the royal family, Oprah appeared to be one of their fiercest defenders. The interview was her platform, her brand of intimate truth-telling. But in the years that followed, Oprah's tone changed. She stopped referencing Meghan and Harry in interviews. She declined to speak on controversies involving the couple. And notably, she was not among the guests at Meghan's recent birthday, despite being neighbors in Montecito. Why the silence? Some suggest Oprah feels she was used, roped into an emotional narrative that may have been more strategic than sincere. Others say Oprah is simply protecting her own brand, steering clear of further drama as Meghan's reputation becomes increasingly divisive. Whatever the case, her absence was deafening. Amal Clooney and Meghan once shared a blossoming friendship, too. Their husbands, both humanitarian figures, were even rumored to be working on joint charitable ventures. Amal hosted Meghan in London. Meghan praised her elegance in interviews. But in the wake of Megxit and Meghan's increasingly public criticisms of the royal family, Amal reportedly began pulling back. According to one source, Amal wasn't comfortable with the way Meghan was airing family issues publicly. She thought it lacked discretion. Tyler Perry, meanwhile, had once offered the Sussexes a literal safe haven. When Meghan and Harry fled the UK in 2020, it was Perry's mansion they took shelter in. He reportedly provided security, privacy, and emotional support during one of their darkest periods. Meghan even referred to him as like a second father. But in the last year, Perry has been noticeably absent from their narrative. He hasn't been photographed with them. He hasn't mentioned them in interviews. And most glaringly, he declined to attend Meghan's birthday party, even as he was in Los Angeles filming a new project. A source close to Perry hinted at a reason. He's loyal, but not blind. He felt taken advantage of. That hospitality came from the heart. But when it became clear Meghan was turning everything into a brand opportunity, Tyler got uncomfortable. Even Abigail Spencer, one of Meghan's oldest friends from her Suits days, has maintained a low profile. While she was once vocal in support, appearing in documentaries and penning emotional tributes, her voice has faded from the conversation. Insiders say she remains loyal, but doesn't want to get dragged into the drama. The pattern is clear. Meghan's circle isn't just shrinking, it's recalibrating. So who's left? There are still a few who appear to stand by Meghan. Makeup artist Daniel Martin, who did her wedding makeup, continues to speak positively about her. Photographer Miss Harriman remains a supporter, often posting about Meghan's work and attending events related to her causes. There are whispers of a few Silicon Valley figures backing her media projects quietly. And of course, there's Harry. But even Harry, according to reports, is struggling with the mounting fallout. Friends of the prince say he's feeling increasingly isolated himself, caught between loyalty to Meghan and the deepening chasm between them and the rest of their world. He's lost his family, and now he's watching Meghan lose hers. Whatever friends she had left, said one former royal insider. It's hard to watch. Some royal analysts argue that Meghan's shrinking circle is the natural result of living in a high-pressure, hyper-scrutinized environment. They point to the similar fate of other women who marry into royalty or achieve rapid fame. Difficulties maintaining long-term friendships, intense public judgment, and the inability to trust anyone fully. But others say it's more than that. They point to Meghan's own choices, her tendency to center herself in every narrative, to use relationships for leverage, to cut ties swiftly when loyalty is questioned or inconvenient. They argue that Meghan's loneliness is not an unfortunate side effect, but a consequence of how she's navigated her rise. In a town like Hollywood, where relationships are transactional and alliances shift with the wind, Meghan is beginning to look like someone without a home base. Someone untethered. Someone who built a kingdom of mirrors and is now watching them shatter one by one. And yet, there's one cruel irony at the center of it all. For years, Meghan has said she felt isolated, misunderstood, betrayed, alone. And now, she just might be. At first glance, the launch of Meghan Markle's Spotify podcast, Archetypes, was positioned to be a cultural moment. Touted as a deep dive into the labels that hold women back, the project promised nuanced conversations between Meghan and some of the world's most influential women. But behind the professional polish, the curated headlines, and the carefully selected soundbites, something was already starting to crack, particularly during its debut episode featuring none other than Serena Williams. This episode was supposed to symbolize everything Meghan was trying to build, an intersection of power, sisterhood, and relevance. And to have Serena Williams as the first guest? That wasn't just strategy, it was symbolism. Serena was Meghan's anchor, a woman of equal stature, a friend who had stood by her during turbulent times. The podcast would open with Serena not just as a guest, but as a stamp of validation. But when the episode finally aired, attentive listeners noticed something unusual. The episode was heavily Meghan-centric. From the opening moments, it became clear that the Duchess wasn't just interviewing Serena. She was using the conversation as a platform to tell her own story. Rather than centering Serena's remarkable career, groundbreaking achievements, or personal insights as a working mother and entrepreneur, Meghan repeatedly circled the conversation back to herself. She detailed her own struggles. She reframed Serena's answers in ways that led back to her own royal challenges. She even recounted a fire that broke out in the room where her son Archie was staying during a royal tour, steering the dialogue into territories Serena wasn't prepared to comment on. Some listeners sympathized. They saw Meghan's anecdotes as relatable and vulnerable. But others, including people close to Serena, saw something else entirely, a pattern. One source who was involved in the production of the episode said, "It was supposed to be about Serena. That's what she agreed to. But by the time editing was done, it was more about Meghan's pain than Serena's journey." The source added that Serena was gracious about it, but privately expressed confusion. She had gone in expecting a candid, mutual dialogue. What she got instead felt like a scripted memoir disguised as a podcast. That moment was pivotal, not because of what Serena said, but because of what she didn't say. During the conversation, Meghan repeatedly offered emotionally loaded statements about her time in the royal family, her public vilification, and the constant emotional toll of being misunderstood. She sought reassurance, validation, alignment. Serena responded, but with restraint. She was supportive but vague, encouraging but cautious. She avoided diving too deep into Meghan's grievances, sidestepping questions that felt too personal or too politically charged. And to those who know Serena well, the restraint was deafening. She wasn't trying to make a scene, said a friend of the tennis star. But she definitely didn't want to be pulled into the drama of the royal narrative. That's not who she is. She's never needed to weaponize her story for headlines. What followed in the weeks after the episode only deepened the divide. As archetypes continued to air, each new episode seemed to follow the same pattern. A celebrity guest would appear, but Meghan would remain at the center. Critics began to question whether the show was about the guests at all, or simply another avenue for Meghan to reshape her own image. And when Spotify and the Sussexes eventually parted ways, with reports that the podcast had not met performance expectations, the media was swift to assign blame. But the damage had already been done. For Serena, the experience was a wake-up call. This wasn't the friendship she had signed up for back in the days of quiet brunches and unrecorded conversations. That bond had been personal, intimate, rooted in shared experience. But now, everything felt transactional. Every interaction had a public angle. Every appearance was tied to Meghan's brand. And the podcast episode, rather than feeling like a moment of celebration between two friends. In private circles, Serena reportedly described the podcast experience as surreal. According to one source, she told a friend, "It's like I walked into a conversation about us and realized it was really just about her." She didn't say it in anger. She said it with a kind of melancholy. A realization that the emotional equity she thought existed between them had been drained, repackaged, and distributed as content. After the podcast aired, Meghan expected praise. And to some degree, she got it. The press applauded her vulnerability. Social media celebrated her honesty. But those within the industry, especially those close to Serena, saw something different. They saw a relationship quietly unraveling beneath the weight of self-promotion. They saw one of the strongest women in the world reduced to a side character in someone else's story. And then came the irony. Months later, Serena appeared on a different podcast. This time, it wasn't Meghan's platform. It wasn't a curated performance. It was a raw, unfiltered interview hosted by a sports journalist with no royal affiliations. And during that conversation, Serena spoke with striking clarity about female friendships, boundaries, and how fame can distort authenticity. She didn't mention Meghan by name, but her words struck a chord. She talked about how certain friendships change when everything becomes public, about how some people begin to rely on you for their image, and it becomes hard to tell if they like you or if they like what you bring. She said, "It's difficult when people treat you like a mirror, like your job is to reflect back their version of themselves. That's not friendship." The internet lit up with speculation. Was she talking about Meghan? Was this Serena's subtle way of drawing a line? If it was, Meghan didn't respond. But her team reportedly did. In the days following that interview, anonymous sources close to Meghan began planting quotes in various outlets, subtly shifting the narrative. One such quote read, "Meghan has always supported her friends, even when it's not returned." Another, more cryptic one, "Not everyone can handle proximity to royalty. Some people become resentful." The implication was clear, but if it was meant to provoke Serena, it didn't work. She didn't engage. She simply stopped showing up. She didn't attend Meghan's birthday. She didn't post a birthday wish. She didn't defend her during the Netflix backlash or the Spotify fallout. Instead, she kept moving, launching her ventures, raising her family, living her life. And in that quiet, powerful absence, she said everything. Because sometimes, the end of a friendship doesn't come with a door slammed shut. It comes with a door left slightly ajar, and the decision not to walk through it again. The moment the quote broke, Meghan Markle's world shifted again, not in public, not immediately, but behind her tightly controlled walls in Montecito. To the outside world, she posted nothing. She issued no direct statements. Her carefully manicured Instagram remained untouched. Her official representatives responded with boilerplate denials, unconfirmed, hearsay, categorically false. But inside the sprawling mansion overlooking the Pacific Ocean, Meghan Markle reportedly came undone. Multiple insiders, some of whom had worked closely with Meghan in various capacities during the run-up to her birthday, have shared consistent accounts of what happened in those immediate 72 hours. The emotional toll, they say, was real and raw. This wasn't the usual tabloid chatter. This wasn't a paparazzi photo she could ignore. This was Serena. And the words she allegedly spoke, "She has no family and no friends," landed like a punch to the gut. When her assistant first read her the story from the trending blog that published the leaked quote, Meghan reportedly froze. She said nothing. Her face reportedly drained of color, and for a moment, according to one staff member, she simply stared at the floor. Then came the questions. Not strategic, PR-friendly questions, but deeply personal, vulnerable ones. Why would she say that? Why now? After everything I've done for her. That night, Meghan didn't sleep. She paced the house. She canceled a dinner meeting. She reportedly called Harry into her home office at 1:43 a.m. to talk it out. According to staff close to the couple, Harry tried his best to comfort her, assuring her that the media was always looking for ways to tear her down. "They want to destroy everything you've built," he told her, over and over. But Meghan didn't seem soothed. Because this time, it wasn't the media twisting her words. It was someone she once trusted. Someone she had defended. Someone who had attended her wedding. Held her hand in her darkest moments. For Meghan, Serena wasn't just a friend. She had been a public ally in her fight for truth, respect, and justice. And now, she was being cast as the symbol of everything Meghan feared most: rejection. According to those who were present in the Montecito home during those days, Meghan veered between shock, disbelief, and fury. At one point, she reportedly shouted in frustration, "She knew what I was going through. She was supposed to protect me, not turn on me." In those moments, the vulnerability that had often felt rehearsed during interviews was unmistakably real. Meghan wasn't just facing a PR crisis. She was confronting the terrifying possibility that the public might agree with the quote, that they might believe it, that maybe, just maybe, they already did. And that realization broke something in her. The next morning, Meghan summoned her inner circle, what was left of it. A handful of trusted team members, a crisis communications expert flown in from New York, and Harry. They sat in the breakfast room overlooking the garden as Meghan presented her plan. It wasn't to respond directly. No, that, she knew, would only pour gasoline on the fire. Instead, she wanted to recenter the narrative, as she put it, to create enough positive noise to drown out the speculation. The plan involved several layers. First, a series of carefully curated photos. Not too glamorous, not too posed. Something grounded, soft, relatable. Meghan holding Lilibet's hand in the garden. Archie helping her bake cookies. Harry in the background, smiling. A perfect slice of domestic harmony. These images would be leaked, not posted. Shared anonymously with select media outlets with vague captions like, "Meghan celebrates a quiet birthday with family."